When it comes to the 2020s era, the fastest growing trend is the player podcast. And you have guys who are superstars, role players, bench warmers, all nowadays who have their own podcasts. And looking across the spectrum, there's good player podcasts, great ones, and a lot of them that are just plain old awful. Now, looking at one of the better player podcasters, we have JJ Redick. And when discussing X's and O's, different game plans, matchups, Redick is always on point. But where he loses me is in interviewing current day players, former teammates, even his own friends. This guy never pushes back or offers fair criticism. Case in point with Kevin Durant. Redick never will push back on Kevin Durant, call it his leadership, or his bad play on the court. And if anything, he'll chastise you, the fan, for pointing out these things and being critical of one KD.
And I mean this. I really do. I'm not just. I'll go on First Take next week and say this shit. I think whatever happens for the rest of Kevin Durant's career, we're gonna look back in like 10 or 15 years and be like, why the fuck did we spend all this time with all the bullshit discourse and not just appreciate literally one of the greatest basketball players to ever play this game?
No, I don't think I will.
Now, stopping it right there, the overall idea, you can't, quote, appreciate greatness and be critical at the same time. I just do not buy that. Because, of course, looking at Kevin Durant, obviously a great player, one of the best players in NBA history. But at the same time, looking at KD's recent moves, his recent play in the playoffs, I can criticize that and still acknowledge he's a great player regardless. And looking at KD's time in Brooklyn, the fact he got everything he wanted, the players, the coaches, the management, got his way all the time, and still failed. How as a fan and observer can I not criticize that? I'm not even going to talk about the Golden State move, that's been done so often. But when it comes to Kevin Durant's big time critics, there's one easy way to silence all of them. Win a championship in his post-Golden State era.
We're going to keep this in the podcast.
Yeah.
And there'll be a million fucking comments on YouTube about why I'm wrong and why he shouldn't have left Oklahoma City or blah, blah. Who fucking cares? He's literally one of the greatest players ever. And we spend too much time on the bullshit instead of just appreciating his fucking night-to-night greatness.
Now, stopping right there one last time. When it comes to the quote-unquote BS with Kevin Durant, I would say the majority of it is self-inflicted. I mean, last month Kevin Durant himself came out of the blue and declared himself one of the best players of all time, if not the GOAT. Once again, as a fan, hearing Kevin Durant say that, disagreeing with that, am I not allowed to push back, give my own input, and criticize Kevin Durant for being well out of bounds? I think so, but for Redick, what he would want is you as a fan be a mindless drone, just eat it up, and not be critical. And I think all the big-time Kevin Durant critics, if he won a championship, had a great playoff run, they would acknowledge that and give him props. But here's the thing. In the last 5 years, this guy not once has made the East Finals or the West Finals. And as a superstar player, a quote-unquote GOAT, what you're judged on is championships. And looking back at Redick, when it comes to him being soft on players, soft on his friends, his big-time problem is this. He has one foot in the analyst lane, another foot in the former player lane. And the biggest example of this was the Ben Simmons interview. And if you watch this full thing, Ben Simmons constantly deflecting, blaming others, taking no accountability for his own actions. And Redick, for about an hour-long stretch, just sits there, eats it all up, no pushback, no questions, no follow-ups. And it was so bad at one point, when it came to the Ben Simmons passed-up layup, Redick unironically excused Simmons for passing that basketball.
Not only was it a spin move, so you're turning.
Yeah,
I'm trying to have people understand here just how bang it is. So you spun on Gallinari. I think it was Gallinari.
Yeah.
Spun on Gallinari, so you spin baseline.
That's
So
what it was.
you're going in blind, and
he's coming behind me.
Yes, and then you've also got yourself in a little bit of an off balance predicament.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit.
Thank you.
Now look, despite Redick being a massive brown-noser player sympathizer, in the player podcast tier, he is by far the best. Now looking at some of the worst, you have a guy like Jeff Teague, who said this about James Harden versus Dwayne Wade.
I think James Harden is the number 3 shooting guard of all time. Me, just like watching this game, going against him, competing against him. Like, it was real life scheme. Like, you had to scheme for D-Wade too. Mm-hmm. But James Harden, when he was by himself in Houston, bro, they was going to the Western Conference Finals every year. They was doing all this stuff.
So, stopping him right there, you're calling James Harden the third best shooting guard in NBA history. That on its own is a bad take. But saying James Harden was better than Dwayne Wade, I mean, you're out of your mind. And when it comes to Jeff Teague making his case for Harden being better, he said, quote, James Harden by himself was in the West Finals every single year. Looking at James Harden's time in Houston, 8 total years, only twice did he make the West Finals, 2015 and 2018, and both years lost the Golden State Warriors. And saying Harden those years was, quote, by himself, implying he had no help, that also is a bold-faced lie. 2015, Dwight Howard, who the previous year was an All-Star and second-team All-League. His supporting cast, his role players, Josh Smith, Trevor Ariza, Corey Brewer, and Terrence Jones. Now you might say that supporting cast, not the greatest in the world. And look, I agree with you guys. But looking at that Rockets supporting cast, they saved James Harden in the NBA playoffs. As in Game 6 versus the Clippers in the second round, James Harden not on the floor. The Rockets were down by 19 points, faced elimination. From that point on, minus James Harden, the Rockets would outscore LA by 31 points, dropping 40 in the fourth quarter. Look at the 2018 Rockets, again a team that is apparently no help. Chris Paul, Eric Gordon, Clint Capella, P.J. Tucker, and Trevor Ariza. This Rockets team right here was a juggernaut and supposedly could compete with the Golden State Warriors. And that year's West Finals, they certainly did. But like many James Harden years before, in the big-time pinnacle moments, he came up short. In Game 7 vs. Golden State, yes, he had his 32 points, but on 41% shooting, 2 of 13 from deep, with 5 turnovers.
Bro, they was going to the Western Conference Finals every year. They was doing all this stuff. And he was unbelievable, averaging 35, 8.
Yes. He's one of the easiest scorers there's been.
Like, it was he was unguardable. And no offense, I mean, like, I ain't trying to disrespect D-Wade. When before Bron got there, no disrespect to you too, Miami was damn near, y'all was competing with us, the Hawks. Like, we was going back and forth.
Yeah.
We wasn't like that. Then Bron came, different stratosphere.
Now, Jeff Teague right here might have short-term memory loss, but Dwayne Wade pre-LeBron James was an NBA champion. I mean, look at his first 3 years. First year, lost in the second round. 05, went to Game 7 of the East Finals, unfortunately lost. And 06, of course, made the East Finals again, and then won the championship versus Dallas. Dwayne Wade at only age 24, waited versus the Pistons and the Mavericks. It's better than anything James Harden has done his entire career. As versus Detroit, the best defense in the NBA, and a team that won 64 games. He averaged 27, 6, and 5 on 61% shooting. And of course, versus Dallas, was basically mini Michael Jordan, averaging 40 points for the last 4 games of that series. And my biggest problem with James Harden and Jeff Teague's overall argument, when talking about Harden in Houston, he says, quote, he was unbelievable, putting up 35, 8, and 8. And look, that is true. 35, 8, and 8, that happened. But those numbers come playoff time. Always took a massive dip. Not saying James Harden wasn't a great player, but to be a top 3 shooting guard in NBA history, come playoff time, you gotta get better, not worse. And unfortunately for James, in the playoffs, was a big time dropper. So that right there is the end of the video. But when it comes to these player podcast clips, I mean, I've got at least 10 of these awful takes in the chamber ready to go at any given moment. From Draymond Green to Jeff Teague, Udonis Haslem, and of course, JJ Redick. In the future, if this video does great, these player podcast clips are going to get exposed daily. So, as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.